Our special Board of County Commissioners meeting is September 19th, 2024. The time is 1:30 p.m. In attendance are Commissioners Matari, Brooks, and Duncan. Are there changes to the agenda?
No.
Hearing none. Public comment.
I'd like to make some public comments, if I may.
Okay.
Commissioners, my attendance at this meeting is out of an effort to cooperate and work together as elected officials. When I was approached last week and asked to attend this meeting, I asked what was it about, and the responses that I got were vague and unclear and undecisive. My request at that time was to make the meeting as productive as possible. It makes sense to work cooperatively and provide and share some information so that people can come prepared for meetings. That is something that the Board of County Commissioners certainly asks of everyone else. I don't think it's unreasonable for it to work both ways. No information was given to me. Therefore, I can't be prepared in responding to the questions that I don't know are going to come my way. I received generic statements, and that's about it. So I'm here to listen and take notes, and at the appropriate juncture, I'll respond if I need to.
All right.
I was only going to say that I love the way you characterize your interactions with us outside of these meetings, but the reality is that, like I had said, it was to discuss company or county personnel policies. That's all. So I'm glad you're here because now you get to participate in the discussion about some of these policies. And so there really is no preset questions that we would be asking because it's a discussion.
Okay, I don't see any other elected officials or department heads here besides HR. Are we talking countywide policies?
I think that there were some incidents that occurred in your office that have wanted me to at least discuss with the balance of the board ideas for countywide policies. So if anything, I consider it to be no different than the book A Complaint is a Gift, where you get feedback. Here's an opportunity for us to reevaluate our county policy based upon some previous actions that have occurred in your office. And so really just having you play a participatory role in helping to develop that policy is really what I hope to get out of today's meeting.
Okay, and then you made the statement, previous actions. I don't know what actions you're referring to. And generally, it's been my experience that when different entities are working collaboratively and cooperatively, when one side receives information from one side of the situation, generally it's good to explore all facets. And I know that hasn't been done yet. I'm the sole administrator of the assessor's office, so this is my first encounter with you regarding these questions that I have yet to learn about. And so it kind of feels like weight has been placed on one side of the whatever. I'm not going to use, well, I guess I'll use the word allegation, but I don't know what the issues are. And let's just discover what they are, I guess.
Okay.
Do you want me to?
Well, I mean, this is office personnel policy, so we'll just kind of start.
Well, I can kind of get this going if it's all right. I think one of the things that's important for the board is that we're always looking out for ways to mitigate liability. And employee liability, the way things have been managed in the past, is something that we learn from what's happened in the past. And so with respect to some recent issues, it got me thinking that maybe we should start re-examining our employee policy so that we can start to mitigate some of the liability that might go with it if things don't work the way we want them to. So, for example, I believe that no employee should be put on administrative leave or removing access to their tool sets for doing their work unless we have provided something in writing to them explaining why this is being done. That we cannot be in a situation where employees have had something done to them, whether that's removing some sort of access to a work tool or being placed on an administrative leave without them understanding exactly why this is being done. And so I thought it was prudent to bring this to the board's attention and say maybe we need to look at these policies to ensure that, from a managerial perspective, we're operating correctly, no different than like how we expect employees to follow the policy manual. So that was part of it. And if you have some feedback on things like that, I certainly welcome it.
I guess the only feedback that I could give you is when you're faced with a real-world situation where you have many, many access points through many, many individuals, sometimes the real world doesn't give you that luxury of time and that affordability of time. And sometimes when there is a need to protect and safeguard, and that is a number one mission and mandate of any elected official. And I would add that every other elected official, including department head, in fact, every public officer has the duty and the obligation to mitigate liability. It's not the commissioners alone. And so, and I would even add that the assessor or perhaps the prosecuting attorney or the sheriff or the clerk, each one of them have a greater need and responsibility to have harmony in the office. Nobody has a greater vested interest than they do to run the operation smoothly within their office. But back to the reality of the situation. Sometimes a situation, you face a situation and you're not afforded the luxury of time to react, and what you need to do is sometimes take action and ask questions later in order to safeguard and protect information. We have been in a situation where we have lost information. We have no longer have the resources that we've had in the past. And it sometimes becomes a battle of quote unquote proving what got lost and what was eliminated. And frankly, that's just a position and a predicament that we shouldn't be placed in. We need to be able to protect and safeguard the assets. I will add that we had a data breach in our department, and when I met with the Board of County Commissioners, I presented to the Board of County Commissioners a very reasonable request to conduct an audit, to review, to make sure that the holes and the vulnerabilities were safeguarded and protected. That is a best practice. I mean, you're smirking, Bruce, but it is a best practice and that every organization has done. And for whatever reason, you didn't go down that path. But that's on the record that it was your choice not to protect the assets. And with that, I'll leave it at that.
Well, I guess my question to you is, do you believe then that if you are to put an employee on administrative leave, do you believe that they should be given notice as to why that is happening? Yes, no.
What is precipitating that question, Bruce? What happened that precipitated that question?
It's not that, okay?
What is that?
You know, the point being is that I think people should, if they're going to be put on some form of administrative leave, I don't care about the timing component, okay? You know, if something has to happen quickly, fine. But I do believe that employees should be given notice as to why
What
a
happened
certain
recently,
action
Bruce, that
has happened.
causes that question?
So-
what is the recent event that caused that?
So my question to you is yes or no, do you believe employees, as a matter of county policy, should be given a reason why they're being put on any kind of disciplinary action?
Generally speaking, if you can do that, yes, but not every situation affords that. And you haven't answered my question. What gives rise to your question at this point in time?
Well, because there was a situation in the past where someone was put on administrative leave
When in the past? How long ago was that?
within, well, certainly my time as a county commissioner.
Okay, well, you've been here over a year and a half.
So it's
approaching
within a
2
year and a
years.
half.
Okay.
Okay. And that employee had no idea why they were being sent home.
So why did you let that issue languish for a year and a half and not bring it up before?
Because it was an instance of one. But then there's a second. I'm sorry.
Bela, let him finish.
And then there's a second instance of an employee having their work tools cut off from them. And again, without giving any specific reason as to why this was being done. So it is easy for someone to make the argument that the decision to do these things, these two events, were arbitrary. That's the last position that the county should ever be in, is that arbitrary acts are being taken on employees within the county government. So my question to you is, do you believe that if something were to happen in a disciplinary fashion to an employee, should they be given notice as to why that disciplinary action is happening?
I've already answered that question, but I will add that anybody at any time can make an arbitrary argument at any time. The question sooner or later comes down to facts.
Yeah.
Okay, and now what you're touching upon, the two incidents that you're touching upon examples that now get into the specifics of employee conduct. And you know, Bruce, as well as I know, as well as everybody in this room, that we cannot even begin to talk about specific personnel performance issues. The details matter, Bruce, and you know that.
Well, my proposal is that we, the board, consider, and with the blessing of council and the HR department, that we memorialize such a policy in our countywide policy. Because if we are in a situation where these things are happening to employees and they don't understand why it's happening, then the person who's responsible for those acts carries the liability.
Well, I am aware that there's an existing ICRIMP recommended policy. Why this county has never adopted that? This county has adopted its own policies. I would point you and direct you to the ICRIMP policy, which I have examined, and there are a number of items that are listed in that personnel policy that are really good practices and best practices that, for whatever reason, this county did not adopt. Now, and I will add also that you're certainly free to adopt whatever policy that you, the board, deem fit. Notwithstanding that, each elected official is also free to adopt policies that, with regard to their own departments. So I don't see any problem with you adopting policy or amending policy, but I would just simply recommend that you take a look. If you want to start somewhere, look at the ICRIMP policy.
Do you follow that policy? Do you follow the ICRIMP policy in your
follow-
office? Yes. Do you
Well,
follow the
there-
ICRIMP policy in your office?
I have not formally adopted the ICRIMP policy. There are policies that have been longstanding, that have been adopted by the prior assessors, which continue to run within my office. I've not amended those. I may have amended one or two of them. Sitting here right now, I couldn't tell you which ones I've amended, but I have created supplemental policies amending that. For example, telecommuting. The board adopted its own policy here, and I supplemented by adopting something internally. I've got one for other various policies, but no, I have not adopted the ICRIMP policy. But we're here talking about the board adopting a policy, and so all I'm simply saying is I'm recommending to you as a board, do you want to look at a best practices and a policy that's been adopted universally by many jurisdictions within the state of Idaho? Take a look at the ICRIMP policy.
Well, I guess, I certainly appreciate your feedback. I think really it comes down to the board deciding, do we want to implement a policy like this? Like what I've talked about. I also think it's important to delineate between an employee's own notebook and a county paid for notebook, and that those notes do belong to the employee if they paid for the notebook. I've dealt with this personally, in the business world, and these are things that should be delineated. And unless council or HR has any, thoughts they'd like to contribute on that, and if the board is open to it, then we could provide direction on developing some policies that address any disciplinary action against an employee. I would argue they should be provided in writing, at least as to why this is being done. Even if it's, there's always an impetus, a catalyst that leads to some sort of disciplinary behavior. It should never be happening in a vacuum where I wake up one day and today I'm going to send somebody home because I have to do it, because if I don't do it immediately, the assets will be compromised. And then I'll think about why I decided to do that later.
Well, and it doesn't even have to be specific. It can be as vague as we're conducting an investigation on policy or anything else. I mean, specifically, why is that person being sent home? As far as, does it fall into this category, this category, this category? And hopefully it's not a criminal investigation, but that could be a reason. It doesn't have to be specific, like, this was a breach at this time yesterday, or whatever it is. But I do agree with you that nobody should be sent home or locked out of their typical tools to do their job without, I mean, my understanding is there wasn't even any notice given that this was going to happen, let alone a reason why. So I think it's very important. And I've been here 5 3/4 years, Darren, and I haven't known of any other office to go on administrative leave, send people home, lock people out, do whatever, and with no explanation. So they always have some type of, hey, we're going to look into this policy. We're going to, we need to do this. We need to fix that. And again, it can be very vague. It does not have to be specific, but it has to be something to give the person notice that it's even happening. Bill, did you have any comments on that?
Well, I have a question in terms of the whole overarching policies that we, as the Board of Commissioners, are tasked with promulgating. And I don't know why we're discussing whether or not we should or shouldn't, or what the policy should be with one elected official. I don't think this particular elected official has earned the right to opine independently of anybody else.
Well, I think the catalyst for it is that these events occurred in that elected official's department. And so in an effort to at least mitigate what could be a pattern, it's only two, but it's two, and it only takes one to go wrong where it can be expensive, is to at least say, hey, look, this is what we're thinking about, and what are your thoughts on this? It sounds like the assessor agrees that we should be giving people notice as to why any disciplinary action would be given to an employee. And so it's probably a good policy. That's the way I interpreted what the assessor said.
Commissioners, I would like to also interject that a moment ago, Commissioner Matari, you mentioned notebooks, and I'm not sure what you're talking about. That sounds like it's yet another topic that you're bringing up. But I will also add that that the issue that you're referring to that occurred within your time frame, which is perhaps greater than a year and a half ago, I'm not sure why we're bringing that back up now, but I will add to you, and I will say that we did talk to that individual. We did have a meeting, one-on-one individually. Some things are made, statements are made verbally, and they're not always reduced to writing. But that person, that individual, did not leave this office without knowing. So I'm not sure what you're referring to or where you're getting your facts from, but they're not correct.
Well, the facts came directly from that employee, so.
Well, and it wouldn't surprise me that you would hear things that are different.
Well, and that's where we need to make sure that those misunderstandings.
You need to fact check. I agree.
No, those misunderstandings don't exist. Okay.
Well, you can classify it as a misunderstanding, but when you put weight as a commissioner on it, then it sounds like it's not a misunderstanding. It sounds like you're supporting it and you're not fact checking.
Well, that's not the case. And the reason that the reason why we're talking is so that there is something that is clear in writing, so that there's no confusion, that we don't have to fact check anything, that in fact it's very clear, and that everyone is on the same page.
You always have to fact check. I mean,
I have a question. I have a question of the of Sylvia. In this case, do we have this problem with other departments?
So departments do consult with HR and legal, and there's been times where Bela has. I think the last situation there. We're not sure how it went, the way it went, but
we've
let
consulted
her
with
finish,
HR
please.
every time.
She's answering Bill's question, so
We've
please let
consulted
her.
every time.
but the wrong direction was followed in this last incident.
Okay, but do we have our problems frequent enough in other departments or at all that we need to now have Bela Kovacs in here and ask him what kind of policies we need. I think that's ridiculous.
I think it's good, the suggestion of the board to have a policy that talks about how and when you can put people on admin leave and the proper notices that are necessary for that, and to make sure that you're working with HR and legal in those situations that impact an employee's employment status or pay status.
Commissioner,
I think that's a great idea, but why do you ask the person whose department has generated the most problems? That's what I don't understand.
I think I probably can answer that, Bill. I think for me, when we have departments operating in a certain way, then I want to work with them to help them integrate better practices within what they're doing instead of just kind of putting down the law. Because if they're operating in a certain way, then I think that the discussion has to happen in order for true change. If we can get consensus, then true change can happen instead of just the board coming down with heavy-handedness. So, and I would do this amongst any other department if a need arose.
Well, I think we should make a policy that we see that is needed and not be heavy-handed, but be equal, because other departments don't present the kind of problems that we've had from the assessor's department. They just don't.
Your commissioners, you're projecting that is a problem. I would encourage the board to read, in this specific case, policy number 425, which the action that occurred is consistent with that. And if you read my direction that I gave to the IT department, what the IT department actually implemented is not what I asked. And so there appears to have been a misunderstanding on the part of IT. So, you know, again, this is what I mean by fact checking. If you were to come to me, Bruce, and say, hey, I've heard this, here's what I've heard, I'd like to know what's going on, I would certainly be happy to talk with you and work with you and show you what happened. But that's not what's going on here. What's going on here is some grandstanding. We're having a public open meeting. You're only having the assessor here. I agree with Commissioner Brooks that if you're going to be looking at policy, then you need to be looking at all departments, and you need to be having a discussion in an elected officials meeting and looking, and the board, you should do some of your own due diligence and bring the policies forward that you feel are lacking or inadequate, and then make recommendations or make proposals or solicit proposals from other elected officials. But this is what you're doing here is a circus.
No, actually, that's not the case. There's an executive session in this, and I mentioned that to you as well, that we could talk about the specifics of any one employee in executive session, okay? Now, you always put forth a set of conditions, which is, I won't come down unless you give me the questions you're going to ask beforehand, okay? So we don't know necessarily what questions those might be, because one question might lead to a different question. The first question's answer may lead to a different question, okay? So there's no grandstanding here. There's no policy for the assessor's office. The policy is for the county as a whole. But you don't want to ever be in a situation where arbitrary discipline is being put forth on an employee without any real explanation as to why that's happening.
Have you read policy
Now, I'm not done
425?
yet. I'm not done.
Have you read it?
I am not done.
Yeah, I've read it.
The reality is that, you know, best practices say you should have a written explanation as to what's happening and have the employee sign that so that they acknowledge it and you give them a copy. That is what I believe to be best practices, okay? I don't believe that that has been happening here, which is why I am having this conversation with the balance of the board, okay?
So the circumstances that we can't talk about here
Unless
not-
you'd like
did
to go
not
into
give rise.
unless you'd like to go into executive
I'm
session.
not planning on going into an executive session, but I'm telling you the circumstances, the hypothetical circumstances that you're projecting do not apply. And so, again, as a matter of professional courtesy, if you have questions, you're supposed to be an advocate, Bruce. You're supposed to be a liaison. You don't work in that capacity.
An advocate?
Those are your words, not mine.
I think if people got to see what it was like to try to get to the root of these problems and try to fix them, they would realize that the friction is extraordinary, okay, dealing with
I
your
do feel
office.
that.
Now, with that said, this wasn't brought to the board in a vacuum. The issue that would be related to the executive session was brought to the board, not to me, okay? And so in this particular situation, I have no desire to go outside of the board and to start having a discussion. The discussion should be with the board because it's a county issue, okay? So that's why we had this meeting, and that's why there's an executive session here, okay?
And again, Bela, I would have liked your genuine, non-defensive feedback to see how we can implement best practices, because that is very important to the board, especially with a $20,000 ICRIMP deductible that is going to be the responsibility of the elected official if a lawsuit is filed and proper protocol was not, or even best practice was not followed.
So, commissioners, I've said before, and I'll say it again, every elected official, every public officer is equally as interested as you are in avoiding litigation, reducing liabilities, and so forth. My response that I'm giving you is not, I may be posturing defensively, but that's because of the experience that I've had with this board. This board has not worked in a very transparent manner. And we have a previous court case decision that demonstrated that the board took action wrongfully. These are all facts and circumstances that weigh into the way that people interact with each other. If you look at the history of the agenda items that this board puts on the agenda, I don't see a true transparency. All you have to do is look simply as across the border, look at Spokane County, look at all of their agenda. They have all documents, all supporting documents that pertain to all their actions on the agenda. They're all hyperlinked. It's been done that way for many, many years.
And so does Kootenai County. Have you been to our website? Have you looked at the business meeting?
I have been to your websites. I've looked at your business meetings, and it's hit and miss. And
you now are bringing this to our attention?
Oh, I brought it before. I've brought it to your attention before, but you're the board. I'm not the board. I mean, it's simply putting the documents out there in a transparent manner. And so this situation is one example. You could have contacted me. You could have given me some information. My department, I am privy to the personnel matters in my department. I would venture to say that it's probably not a violation of executive session material to simply share with me information about the personnel related matters, which I already know. I don't see, I see that nothing more as being cooperative and collaborative to work together. But you're using that as a shield to cloak information and then ask me to come to a meeting where we have press present and you ask me about questions that relate to personnel actions that I can't really talk about. I can't get into the specifics.
Again, we have executive session if you'd like to get into specifics. That's why it's on the agenda. We are more concerned of a broad policy, best practices, so these incidents are not repeated a third time.
Right. So there was an executive session. There's multiple executive sessions. Apparently there was one last week, Tuesday in the morning, that I was not aware of. It was characterized and classified under my name, which I didn't put on the agenda.
Which this was the meeting that took that place because you specifically requested of my staff that it be a standalone meeting and not part of status update.
No, the meeting that I request had nothing to do with the subject matter that you covered at 10 a.m. last week, Tuesday.
Oh, it was at 3 o'clock. Yeah, you're right. That was the 3 o'clock
It
meeting.
was completely different.
Yes. The status update was the 3 o'clock meeting. That's what it was.
No, it wasn't a status update. Anyway, let's not quibble. The record is what it is. But I'm just saying there are ways for us to work together. We need to find ways to do that.
And we would argue the same. You have not been transparent with the board. You have not worked with us either. And you sit here and spin your perception of it.
Give your example, Leslie.
There's no point, Bela, because you have your opinion and there's no point.
I mean, the point of this meeting with an executive session is so that we can have that discussion. It's not me as a commissioner discussing it with you, it's you discussing it with the board.
I think if you as a board genuinely want to improve policies, then you need to have an elected officials meeting and a department head meeting. Call all the elected officials, call all the departments. I'll bring my issues because I know what issues I'm dealing with. And in the interest of working collaboratively and cooperatively together, we can have those discussions. Everybody draws upon their experiences. The sheriff's going to draw on his experience, the prosecutor's going to draw on his experience, the clerk will draw on her experience, and so on and so forth. I will do the same. What makes you think I'm not going to do that? Why do we have to have a specific, just like Bill Brooks said, why do we have to have a specific assessor-only meeting? It doesn't make any sense. It appears duplicitous and grandstanding.
No, it's because these issues originated from your department that we're having this discussion. In fact, no other department has these same issues.
You keep classifying as these issues originating, but yet you don't even cite the facts. You can't tell me that you've read Policy 425. You don't know the facts that related to the circumstances. You didn't even know that we had a verbal discussion with the previous employee that occurred over a year and a half ago. You didn't know that.
I did know that because
Well,
that
then
employee
why
had a
would you say-
conversation with me
Well, then why would
and
you say
others.
that they weren't told?
Because
It's
that
just
employee said they were not told, and
just not
what
true.
if that's the case? Then we are failing somewhere. If an employee
Well,
is saying, "I don't know why this is happening to
we
me,"
have two
then
individuals.
I'm sorry. Why do you keep cutting me off?
We have two individuals that say it did happen.
I wasn't done yet.
Please finish.
That employee made those statements to me, and I presume other county commissioners. And so, and I presume other people within the county at HR and maybe even legal. And so if that's the case, we should never have somebody roaming around the county not knowing why they were put on a disciplinary action. And we should be able to demonstrate and prove that we gave this person notice as to why this was happening, which is why best practices states you should define in writing what the issue is and have the employees sign it so that there's no confusion. The he said, she said world is long gone, Mr. Assessor, okay? And that's the problem right now, is you're telling me it's wrong, and I'm telling you what this employee said, and we need to fix that issue, okay? That's the issue I'm trying to address. I don't care whether you're right or wrong. What I care about is that employees should not be roaming around here wondering why they were put on disciplinary action without knowing exactly why, and that you can prove that you made that clear to that person.
So as I said, Commissioners, my recommendation, if you really truly want to increase and improve policies, then have a meeting with elected officials. Invite all department heads and elected officials to attend. Bring your proposals, ask them to bring theirs. That's the way you do it.
Yeah.
Well, and I was hoping that you would give us a proposal today, and you have. You've pointed us to ICRIMP, so we can start there, and HR will work with the board and bring a draft together, and we will meet with elected officials. But I think this was the first starting point.
Well, if I brought you a proposal today, it's only by accident. It's because I didn't know what this meeting was going to be about, and I didn't know what your questions were going to be. So I guess that's what I'm saying, is in an environment where you want it to be truly productive, you let people know ahead of time what's expected of them.
Do you have
so they
my
can-
email that I sent you about this meeting?
The one you sent me yesterday,
Huh?
a day before?
Yeah.
Well, you sent me a day before, but I'm not going to put together a proposal.
I didn't
one
ask
day
for a
before.
proposal. Oh, I asked for a discussion, which we've had today, and you have brought up ICRIMP personnel policy.
And my recommendation is that you solicit the input from all elected officials
And
and
that-
all department heads.
And that will come as well.
Yeah, but the impetus for this is just the issues that have come out of your department. And so I think just having that discussion is prudent. And if the board agrees, we can give direction to HR and legal to ensure that we have best practices in place so that no one is put on a disciplinary pathway without them knowing exactly, preferably in writing, why such an action was taken. And that way we can avoid this issue of he said, she said, which is really what you're alluding to, that we're not getting the facts, but we hear directly from the employee's mouth what's going on, and you're saying there's something different, well, we need to fix that. That's bad communication to me.
So I'll call for public comment.
Commissioners, could I public comment? Jonathan Gillen for the record. I just want to clear up a little bit of misinformation about the business meeting documents that were made by the assessor. The business meeting documents, what it's provided, are posted on our website. And about 90% of them are posted. And for example, the last time one wasn't posted, it was an emergency plan. I didn't contact legal to post an emergency plan because I kind of know there's going to be elements in there that probably is exempt from its disclosure. So, however, at the top of our business meeting document says there is a clear link. If you feel like there's a document you would like to request, send in a public records request. That way, they have a request, they can send it in, I can get it to legal, and we can do it right. And the hyperlink thing, that's an additional function that costs extra thousands of dollars. And actually, the board has been exploring getting voting history and smoothing it out. It's in a process that's going on. So I just want to clear that up for the record.
Thank you.
And I want to support Mr. Gillum's statement. I was not, my statement was in no way a statement adverse to what you've been doing. I do, and I have seen improvements, but the challenge is that some of the documents that I have provided have not been posted, so historically. So
I'd say if that's the case, let us know.
Just a quick question, Bayla, in terms of that iCrimp policy, are you talking about the one that employees can't run for office against their elected? Is that the one you're specifically referencing?
no, I'm talking about the overall, it's a very broad policy. It's comprehensive. It covers everything. And that's the policy that I'm aware of. Now, I have not compared it line for line, word for word with Kootenai counties. All I know is it's a recommended policy that iCrimp has developed that they present. I believe it's iCrimp's recommended county policy.
They're broader than ours are. They do have some good examples, but we're looking at it more from a what's practical for us as well.
So do we have direction
We do.
for HR and legal? Okay,
Yep.
great.
And with no further public comment, 2:08, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.